group in Background Basics. How many people here have not ever been on a set? Welcome.
Wow.
You've just found your new passion, your new fix, your new high. So I'm going to go through the breaking into Background Basics. Now, for people who have like their phone with them, could you do me a favor right now and go to Casting Coffee, the Casting Coffee page on your phone, because I know it works on mine, it doesn't mean it works on everybody's, because phones are weird.
Like on my
animals.
Facebook?
Yeah, on Facebook. You go to the Facebook page for
I was
Casting
gonna say, I'm
Coffee.
just gonna pop up on Casting Coffee.
Boom. Susan's bam.
Bam.
Okay, Susan, on the banner there, do you see where it says files?
Yep.
People can find files.
Oh, look at that.
You can find files.
Wow.
If you open the files, you will see Breaking in the Background as a file.
Ah.
See,
that's cool.
That's what I'm going to be reading from today. For those of you who are new, just know it's up there, as well as the other file. I do have some handouts, but the other file is the list of all the casting directors in New Mexico. So when I tell you to go online and when I tell you to go online and submit to all the casting directors, boom, there's your file with your emails and your Facebook pages. Like all those casting directors. Like their pages so you will see their casting calls. Another one that's important to like, you can jot down if you have something, or I'll put it on tonight, but New Mexico Extras and Actors Forum. That's Roy Kinney's site. He's supposed to be joining us. Excuse me, everybody posts on Roy's page. So that's a good one to have. And he knows after today he'll get a lot of new requests, so. All right, so I'm going to start from the beginning. You can read along, or it's going to be filmed, thanks to Wyatt Moore. Thank you to Glory Bound Church for posting this for us. And wonderful people who are all about the film business in New Mexico. Goodness. If you're an indie filmmaker and you want to do a film here, just contact me. I will contact Claudia and Wyatt, and we'll get you set up, because they're just so giving and such wonderful people. Okay? So let's start at the top. Breaking in the Background. How to register. So you go to each casting director's website and fill out your profile. You'll see a little thing that says profile, hit on that. That way you'll be included in their database. They're going to ask you things like, of course, your name, your height, your weight, your hair color, your eye color, a profile picture. We're going to have somebody talk about profile pictures as well. And you will get prompts throughout, so follow the prompts. Just follow the prompts. Special skills, believe it or not, those are very important. I mean, if you hoo-hoo, put it down there. You never know what they're going to be calling for. So special skills, if you're ex-military, excuse me, folks. If you're ex-military, they get a little extra incentive if they use ex-military. So please, not just for the fact that you are and you want to be a soldier, just throughout they get a little special. And thank you for your service in advance, by the way. So to respond to a casting call, the casting calls will appear on the New Mexico Film Office website. It's always good to go there. It'll be under public interest, casting calls, or the bulletin board. Check it as well, okay? And then again, the New Mexico film-based Facebook pages. When you see a casting call that you fit the requirements for, if they're looking for 20-year-olds for a rape, come on, don't do it. Don't do it. That's a special group. They know who their people are. So you will submit to the email listed on the call out. do not text or message a casting director. They've reached out to you to get emails. They've got somebody sitting right there at the computer accepting those emails. And, you know, they're gonna look at everything. So don't jump the gun and say, hey Shane, you know, I wanna work. Go through the proper channels, okay? Go through the email, do a submission. I had somebody the other day who submitted for Roswell, and her note was, well, if I submit it, should I just show up? It's like, no. And that's, you know, that's just lack of information. You know, bless her heart, she didn't go out there because she wouldn't be on the list. Okay. Yes, all submissions will follow the same directive via email. And again, read that post carefully. If you do not fit, do not submit. You're wasting their time, you're wasting your time. Make sure that your headshots are clear and look like you. I had somebody Photoshop one of me that I call Lego Barbie because it's not me. So when you submit, you will submit a headshot and a full body photo. When I say a full body photo, basically from the knees up. They just want to get a guess on your weight, you know, without being rude. They want to get a guess on your weight and, you know, what size you might fit into, especially if it's a period piece. Bleeding, all those dresses come in size 2 to 4, period. So, your headshot, your body photo, a cell number, and your email. Your height, weight, hair color, eye color. Important, your vehicle, the make, model, and year. Make, model, and color, sorry. And year. Correct. Because sometimes they're looking for older vehicles. Sometimes they're looking for new vehicles. They're not crazy about red, black, or white, but go ahead and send that in, okay? So, congratulations, you got the call. You are now employed by a production. Treat it as a job, okay? This is not, it's not a day at camp. Treat it as a job by confirming your booking. Be polite on the phone. Inquire where the scene is going to be shot. Now, I know this from experience, because sometimes you'll be talking to a casting director and it'll be like, awesome, great, I'm working. Where is Tucumcari? So, do yourselves a favor and say, may I ask where the set is? So you can, right from that moment, make a game plan in your mind. Whether it's going to take you an hour to get to set, an hour and a half to set. Don't wait for the final posting, just ask them, okay? Because it may be hours before you receive your confirmation. Sometimes past 8, sometimes past 10, sometimes you'll go to bed and just check it in the morning. Get up at 5 and check it. So, but the information you will receive the evening before your day on set will list your call time, directions, maps, costume guidelines, and makeup and hair guidelines. Most times they will ask you to come camera ready, which means your hair is styled, your makeup is light. If they want to increase it or enhance it, they'll do it. If it's a period piece, no makeup. If it's a period piece, no makeup. Come with clean, dry hair. And don't sneak back into holding and start putting that makeup on girls, because that's what they're going for. I've seen it happen a lot. All of a sudden the false eyelashes come out and I'm like, what? Okay, and now as far as wardrobe and costume department goes, they'd like you to wear your first option. Bring them 2 to 3 other options to choose from. You don't have to bring the entire closet. I'm very guilty of that. But at least 2 to 3 options, and not your cleanest dirty shirt off the pile. If you get in the background, thrift shops are your best friends. I can't tell you how many times I've been booked on something and I've run out to buy a suit, you know, better call Saul, for $8, you know. And then I have it for the next thing that happens, because I played everything from homeless to the Republican National Convention. You just don't know what you're going to be cast in. Okay, so be sure to open whatever link you get and read all the information they send you, because you are responsible for that. Make sure you read it, know where you're going, you're gonna save yourself a lot of grief at 5 a.m. Be ready for set. Make sure you have 2 forms of identification, a New Mexico driver's license and a social security card. They need those 2 to get you signed in for payroll. Have those 2 with you. If you have a passport, you prefer to use that, that's a 1-step process. Bring your passport. Excuse my cold again. Okay, for set. Around 30 to 15 minutes early from your call time. On time is late. You show up on time. By the time you get to base camp, they'll be looking for you. The casting director will be calling you. First PA will be calling you. Just get there early because sometimes it takes a while to get to set. So you'll be looking for base camp and extras parking signs. This is where you will park. You'll generally catch a van from there, a white people mover, that will take you to holding. Holding is generally either a tent or a part of a building, and that is your destination for the day. So settle in, you're gonna have a lot of fun. Bring a book, bring a tablet, bring something to keep you occupied. Cell phones are allowed in holding, they're not allowed on set. If you do, if you're worried about your cell phone, please turn it off on set. You don't want to be that one background where all of a sudden it's ringing and the PA is ready to strangle someone, and it's you, and you can't turn it off that quick. Okay, so when you check in, you'll check in with your PA. That means you will get your paperwork. If it's your first day on a production, you'll return to the PA station with your identification so you can be verified. So that is your paperwork, that is your payroll. If you will be told when by the PA to report to wardrobe and to hair and makeup. Take your paperwork with you for wardrobe. If they put you in something else, you'll turn it over to them and you'll get it back at the end of the day. Okay, so on set, please remain in holding until you hear all background to set or the PA comes in and goes, you. Sometimes they take you in waves so they can set you in places because they're setting up the shot. So just be aware when the PA comes into holding and starts pointing, or if they say all background comes to set, just get up and go. Be ready to go. So the PA and the AD will give you your one spot. Let's say, for example, this is my one spot. So I'm going to look around. I'm going to see, how am I going to mark this in my head? And I'm going to stand there patiently until I hear them say, rehearsal, action. Okay? The PA or the AD will tell you what your action is. Go over and shake this gentleman's hand. So, that is pantomiming. That is what you will do most of the time. There's a lot of noise on set. You'll wait for your cue of rolling before you do that action. And when they say cut, you'll return to your one. Right here. Let's see, the first one through will be rehearsal for the director. You'll hear cut, return to your spot, and prepare for the action you've done. You may receive additional direction at this point. Again, this is all part of setting up the scene. Sometimes you'll be asked to return to holding because they're going to bring the principals out and set them. Remember where your one was. Take a look so you know where your one was. Okay? There are many conversations between crew and cast between setups, and they appreciate not being distracted. Even if you are not on camera, remain silent anytime you hear rolling until you hear cut. You will be told when your scene is done and asked to return to holding. When it's time for lunch, dinner breaks, this will be announced by your PA. Don't listen to anybody else on the crew saying, we're going to lunch, because that's not you. The cast and crew are always fed first, or there will be a separate food line for background. Again, your PA will direct you for that. Notes. Never camera chase. Personally, I don't know where the cameras are. I'm not that gifted, but some people do. I've seen background, like Shauna back there in the back row, all of a sudden in the next scene she's up here next to me, and it's like, how the hell? Because they know where the cameras are. There's plenty of cameras on set, okay? You never know what the edit is going to turn out. Wait for the happy surprise. Be natural. Just be natural. Don't be looking for the cameras. Don't look at the camera. You're part of a whole process. So, if you need to take a break, you need to let the PA know where you're going. Never leave the set without they're okay. Bathroom break, whatever. Just make sure PA knows, because they have been filming and it's a matter of continuity. So if you were in that spot and we start filming and you're not in that spot, you just ruin continuity for the entire project. No photos are allowed on set. Please leave your cell phones in holding or turn them off on set. Holding, maybe a tent close to set. Now, if you're close to set, like if they tell you to go in a little room like that coffee shop there, you're on set, okay? So if you hear any directives going out, if you hear rolling or cut or whatever, they can hear you. If you're in a holding tent that's away from set, a little bit different stories, but please try to keep it in hushed tones, because the microphones pick up everything. Do not ask your PA when you're going home. That is the most obnoxious thing a background person can do. Just know you're going to be on set 8 to 10 hours. I worked with a guy, I swear to God, on Midnight Texas, who after 12 hours just started raising such a fuss about, I've got stuff to do, and I've got to be up in the morning with my kid, and this is inhuman, and was doing it while we were filming. But we were in a bar, so he just looked like a drunk lunatic. I hope they keep that in, because the guy next to him was petrified. He was like, so I hope they keep that in. I hope they don't edit that out. And then when we finally got broke, about a half an hour later, we're walking back to holding, and he's like, well, I've been on set like 5 times. I'm like, dude, you know better. You know you're going to be here 12 hours. Why did you start complaining at the 12-hour mark? You know it can go, and it only went like an hour over, so.
That's when you're getting time and a half, so you should be happy.
You should be happy, you're getting time and a half.
Let's go 13 hours.
Okay. Oh, and if you do have your hair and makeup done, again, let me specify, do not change it. If they teased it up to here, they're going for that look, don't start like doing this, or pulling it back because you're hot. They've established the look they want for you. False eyelashes, keep them out. That's a wrap. This is a directive applies to you only when you hear it from your PA, not your second PA, not your third PA. I was on a set one time where the second PA said, oh, look, I guess we're wrapped. And the first PA came running into the tent, and 75% of the people had left. And he needed 40 on set right now. Make sure, go to your first PA, okay? Or just make sure you've heard it a couple of times to be clear, because he was not happy. Changing rooms are usually located in holding. If you've gotten wardrobe, change back into your street clothes and prepare to return your items to the costume trailer. Be considerate, button the clothes back the way you found it, that's the way you got them, and on hangers in the question mark direction. Gather any items such as shoes, belts, etc. Take them all to wardrobe so you can get your paperwork back. And that way you're ready to check out. Same with props. Find a props person. If they've given you a prop, make sure everything's turned in. If you were not costumed, you may get into line with your paperwork to be signed out. Again, this will probably be the PA and the second PA expediting the line. You will receive a pink copy for your records. You may be asked to return the next day to complete the scene or be on the set. So volunteer if possible, unless you have a full-time job or whatever. If they didn't get everything done and they ask you to come back the next day, say sure, because it's such a big help. gather your items, making sure you have everything you came with that morning, head out to the vans to return to base camp and your vehicle. Please be careful. Many times you've worked 12, 14, 15-hour days. If you have a long drive ahead of you, stop and get some coffee. See if you can get it off one of the trucks, one of the crew trucks. I mean, for far-flung locations, try and ride share. I've ride shared with a few people, one who just wouldn't stop talking, but you know what? Get me awake, get me going. It's important. Do not post photos or any information from your day, location, project name, etc. You've signed a confidentiality agreement. And posting is considered a breach of that contract. Photos may be shared the day following the screening or premiere of the series or movie. It will take 10 to 12 days to receive your check from the payroll company. This is not a hard and fast rule. Sometimes it will take 20, sometimes when it gets to 30, you can start getting nervous. Especially on any production, they're not set up yet. Okay, on something that's existing, it could be a little earlier. So go ahead and keep that pink slip and staple it together with your payroll stuff when you get it. Casting directors are not responsible for payroll. Don't call Lori and say, Lori, where's my money? The payroll company is on your pink slip. Call them. And again, if it goes over 30 days, then you have a right to, and you've called them and you've gotten no reaction. Lori, any of our casting directors will go to bat for you and make sure you get that check. Okay? So, any questions to start before we turn it over to the panel? Didn't get up here. You get up here.
I'm lonely, sir.
He's lonely, yeah.
You sit down over here.
Um,
Alfred, sit down over here.
Yeah, I'm gonna pass the mic. So we're gonna pass the mic around. First, we're gonna start with Chris, who's with UNM. And he's got some really interesting stuff going on that he addressed at Casting Coffee last time. So let's hear from Chris.
Hi everybody, I'm from the UNM Film Department. I'm product of that department. I came here almost 8 years ago to study film from South America. I'm graduate and now I'm part of the faculty. And we're trying to do something a little different in the department. The department is changing. Film department was before a little more academic. We are just watching movies and talking about the philosophy about that film. Now, since our city is becoming more cinematic, let's put it that way, for such amount of productions, we are pushed for that demand on the people and for our own students now to do more productions. Last semester in fall was the first hybrid class called directing. This class, for sure, we show all the process since read the script to put it on the screen. And we want to try to put all these things together. Last year we have a production of 25 shorts for the end of fall. For 1 month of that, in the middle of the process, we start receiving all these crazy casting calls. We need an actor like that, and say, wow, we don't have any database in the department to help these students to accomplish these short films. And we see that the students get crazy without any connection. If you don't know it's that film, if you don't know someone on film, it's very hard to go inside that network. I see in this room a couple of familiar faces. I work or I edit back in the days and things like that. And I believe in the power of community in film. And we're trying to address people like you guys to our program. We don't have anything to offer to the participants on these labs. We call them the film labs because we go in there and we analyze all the film process that exists. And because we are from the University of No Money, we cannot offer and pay things to our guests. But we can do something about it. And we can make our real. We're trying that for according to my schedule for the classes, the first week of October, we're going to start working on one-page script. These scripts are made on the faculty to another department of the screenwriting, and we're trying to put a scenes of 2-3 actors. One conflict, resolution, easy as scene, nice. And we need actors. We see last semester, the first time that this class happened, that when we put our film students in front of the camera, we have a big problem. Nothing happened, it takes sometimes 2 hours, to figure out how this guy is going to act it, and start to caring about the mic or how the camera is going to zoom in. And then, in this semester, I become active part of this class, and I think it's very important to match with actors in the community. Then the thing is we're expecting 24 projects. We're talking about for the first exercise in the last week of October. Where is my numbers? Oh yeah, we're talking about like 36 actors, and a couple or 3 people. And it's going to happen on Friday. We want to meet on the Mesa del Sol in the UNM building. I don't know if you are familiar with the Q Studios. Just cross the street when there's all this church of that, where's that show was?
Midnight Texas.
Exactly, Midnight Texas, but the other show of the church, I don't remember. In that corner, Preacher, there we are. In that corner, the big building belongs to the UNM Cinematic Arts Department. And we have an amazing installations. There are 3 studios, we have green screens, we have like a beautiful movie theater to watch movies, and there are like 200 people. By the way, by the end of fall, that we are already in this semester, we want to have the previews. And it's something, it's like a 48 hours in 2 months. Let's put it that way. We asked to each crew we are thinking a group of 4-5 people to make this short film. And they are matched with actors, have the idea that combine in these situations. And the beautiful thing is we will be able to have like a little screening, like our own red carpet, and see all the work of all this. Not only they're going to be good, I'm telling you, sometimes say, oof, I'm start sweating right now thinking in that moment. But that's the beautiful part of this film process. We see the evolution on the technical part, we see the evolution of the actors. I bet you if in your own experience, the first time you hear your voice in the recording or you see it in the film, you say, oh, that's me, or no, there are so many emotions. Because cinema is an emotional art. We're going to touch this part of the human things. And better if we work in the community. One of the reasons I'm here today, and if somebody wants to be part of this, we want to start connecting with the Facebook page. Maybe we want to send a file to the Facebook page, and we want to do what we learn when this lady start the exposition. We're going to create a file with all this information. Maybe it would be nice to, I was thinking yesterday with my boss, with the professor of the class of the theory part, that would be interesting to make a casting day. And one part where you can invite a couple of casting managers or directors to teach our students how is the process. And invite actors that want to work in our projects to make a database for casting. We are very immature in the department in how we work on productions. We, for the last 10 years, and since I was part as a student in the department, for me it was very theoretical, it's very snobs and books. And now we are in this transition, a couple of people have been retired from the department, there's coming these alumni to try to change the things. We have a lot of classmates that are working on LA or Louisiana, they're jumping, and we are finally becoming filmmakers that are born in this city, UNM or CNN. There are not only people that are coming from other states to make film. No, we are the product of this change in the city. I don't know if any questions. I think I tried to put the most clear concept what we're trying to accomplish. And it's not only this class. We have another class, it's called cinematography, that I'm part to. I'm teaching 3 classes this semester, and 2 of these ones have this practical part. The other class, cinematography, we are not required too many actors to work directly with these student groups to produce a short film, but yes, we will need volunteer actors to be part of our classes, lighting, how you walk in, how you move. It's pretty much camera and lighting, how it works. And again, the actors that will be volunteers for all these classes, they are going to end in with a reel. And it's something amazing. If you are in this evolution of an actor, I started as an actor in South America. I was on the theater, old school, 3 walls, all the things, and I was catched for the film. And I said, well, I want to go to study film, and I ended here. And then I know how is the acting process. I feel it here. And it's something beautiful that you can have your reel. Sometimes, as an editor, I was reached with a couple of local actors to make their own reel. And I say, okay, I can make your own reel. I know how important it is for an actor to have the reel on the website, or you can send your email, plus your Vimeo, YouTube link with your reel. It's very important. I think a headshot is a great tool, and a reel is a complement of your work. And then, if you are wondering when all this starts, we are thinking on week 8, will be October 11, is when we have our blocking camera exercise. That is going to be the first contact with these students, and then we can match actors in these groups. We divided in 2 groups. We meet after Friday, and that will be the 8 groups we have. And for the week, the October 25, then we start the assignments, blocking exercise. Blocking exercise is just make a scene and say, well, the action is happening here, and we need to have coverage of all these angles. That requires maybe, a scene takes pretty much 5 hours. To say if everything goes well, on the same camera, and how crazy is your location. We're talking about maybe you will invest 5 hours of your time, maybe more. When one part that was for me being in this class as a teaching assistant was for me 2 class semester that class. And we produced an amazing short film that become more than I was expecting. It's going to release in 1 month, and so far there's things that's happening beautiful, and we're trying to accomplish more than we did last semester. And then I'm very excited for the things we can produce, with this engagement with the community. That's it.
That's great.
So that'll be a chance for people to get in front of the camera, learn how to learn your lines, and get a nice reel. So Chris will be posting on Casting Coffee, be looking for that. I think it's awesome. And I love the way he said 8 hours, maybe. Please, understand, if you're gonna be in the film business, 8 hours is a blessing, actually. Or you said 5, right?
Or a scene.
Well, see,
Yeah, 1 scene.
see where my mind went immediately, immediately went to 8. Okay, we're gonna go over to Carlos. I just heard, unfortunately, Nisha is at UNM Hospital with a friend, so she will not be joining us. I'm sorry, as of this morning, she was coming, but she got a call, and she's at UNM, so let's send her good wishes, okay? I know, we love Nisha. We're gonna go to Carlos, however. Hi, Carlos.
Hi, everybody. I think most of you know me. Those of you who don't, I'm Carlos. And this is pretty much my personality most of the time. So last night I stayed up for a while just writing down all these little notes for you guys, and and then Bobby covered them all. So have a good day.
You don't get off that.
So, unlike usual, I'm actually just going to kind of read some of this off to you guys. She did cover quite a bit of that, but a reiteration doesn't hurt that bad. At the end, as always, and is my favorite part of doing this, is interacting with you guys. So at the end of it, hey, ask whatever you want. Because I love it. Yeah, I really, really do. And I've had shows where I have had the same background for months on end, and when I do that kind of thing, then I tell them they get 5 questions a day. So, you guys get 5 questions. No, just kidding. You can have as many as you want. So, background basics, a short guide to being an extra of movie, motion pictures and television. I'm the assistant director with the Directors Guild of America. However, I wasn't always. So just like you, I had to start somewhere, and perhaps you have more experience than I did at that point. It's very likely. The fact is that all of us have different levels of experience in everything that we do, and you may have taken acting classes or film classes, and you may have not done that. You may run a flower shop or a legal practice or been a fighter pilot. It's all very legitimate, it's all very true. I've worked with all those types of people who it's their first time or their 5th time or their 50th time being an extra. Every facet of life is represented in film, so there is no type. You know, you can be old or young or big or small or any color of the rainbow. It's all necessary. It's every single film needs every single one of those characters. If they want something specific and they want you to be militaristic, then fine. Obviously, you know, if you're 85 years old, you're probably not going to be militaristic unless it's a Civil War picture. So, let's see. The truth is that most of the time, your role in film or television will be limited to portraying an average person on an average day going about an average task. So that being said, in our everyday lives, if everyone were extraordinary and we're a fighter pilot or what have you, then most average people would be overlooked. So, like me, you have the opportunity, which I had when I began in the best place, which is the beginning. Because my goal in writing this to you is to give you a head start on things that the average person may not know when they begin. Next section, asking questions. So you figured out how to get into film and television, huh? Well, good for you. So now what? Well, ask questions. That is where all the learning begins. No person is born knowing everything, and no person is born knowing how to do film, that's for sure. There are plenty of things that seem perfectly logical and easy to understand, but sometimes film isn't so simple. There are plenty of things that are not so obvious when it comes to filming without a little bit of history. Most of the time, there will be limits when it comes to being a background player. Generally, you'll have specific movements, specific timing for those movements, and usually you'll be required to be silent when appearing to be perfectly normal in conversation or action, as Bobby so eloquently demonstrated. The reason is not so simple as just because we need to have clear audio. Often that is the case, however, a great deal of the time it's actually a courtesy to the actors or to the crew. It can be quite difficult to concentrate on a performance as an actor when there's a lot of noise around you. If you care to test this, then try to do the following. Recite the alphabet backwards, while a group of people around you recite the alphabet forwards, and they all start at a different time. That's kind of what it's like to try to concentrate on performing while so much is going on around you, even if it's in whispers. And I know it kind of sounds a little silly, but even in whispers, it can be really, really distracting. And people are really beautifully creative, and I love that about the human condition. You and I could come up with 2 characters in this back room over here, and we're having this great little conversation that makes perfect sense in the setting. But the actors may be more interested in what we have to say than the lines that they had to memorize. So that can be a little difficult to deal with. Aside from the effort to emote the scene properly, we must also perform the choreography that the scene requires. All this sometimes and more make it a challenge to concentrate in a room in such an example. So as an example of many questions you have, this serves to show that there are often more than one reason and more than one answer for all of your questions. However, those questions can be the very best way yourself as a background player, or even to try to make a change to another position, i.e. stand-in or photo double, or stunt person, or move to crew. So, who do you ask? Who do you ask all these questions to? That's a good question. Many times the best people to ask are those in your very same position. Before deciding to stroll over to the director and ask why they didn't do something else with the actor, never do that. It would serve you much better to ask your following background players. What, why, and where are really good questions. There are many background players who've been in the industry for years. Many, many years, have a lot of knowledge, a very, very healthy and wealth of knowledge. So ask them first, because most of the time they'll have an answer. And then if the answer seems fishy or incorrect, or maybe somebody else argues with them and says, that's not what I heard, then clarify with somebody else, probably to your benefit. There's also a lot of misconceptions about the line, where the lines get blurred when it comes to who you can talk to and cannot talk to. And in an effort to make that more clear, I will suggest to you, ask the background first. After you've asked the background, I would suggest to your casting person, your casting agent, your casting firm, whichever vernacular you would choose to use. Ask those people, because they deal with us, production, day in and day out. So they know what the requirements are from the film, hopefully. And so usually they can answer any of those types of questions, like she was saying, where's Tucum Carry? It's a perfectly valid thing. I, on production side, have been handed maps to places that I've never heard of, and I lived here most of my life. So it does happen. It does not matter if you are on a multi-million-dollar Hollywood film, a student film, or an independent film. The person who is in charge of background is the assistant director. It's always the assistant director. Directors are not in charge of background, and if a director wants something from background, they should relay that information of what they want to the assistant director. This surprises some people. Let's see. I read that part, yeah. Ask questions before deciding. Ask questions before deciding that the director has instructed you. There's large differences between a director asking you to step aside a foot or two or actually giving you actual direction. I bring this up because there are a lot of rules where this is concerned, especially on union films. So if the director directs you, because a lot of people ask, how do you become a Screen Actors Guild member and what have you. If a director directs you, that does make you eligible to be a member of the Screen Actors Guild. That does not make you a member, that makes you eligible. However, there are differences. If he asks you to step a foot or two aside for the blocking of the scene, that's not directing you. If he asks you to emote a line, that is directing you. If he asks you to perform something that would be dangerous, that is definitely directing you.
And you
So,
should ask for a bump.
well, in that particular case, you should ask if that goes under a stunt contract, and in which case then you would receive what is called a Taft-Hartley, but we'll get into that later. So, ultimately asking questions is good practice, but the when, how, and whom of asking those questions is important. Learning when and to whom to speak to can keep you from working if you do it incorrectly. Or it can make you one of the favored background artists that we have. There are many things that you're expected to do as a background artist. You're expected to work long hours. You're expected to usually eat after the film crew. I just want to tell you why real quick, because that always seems to be an interesting point. It's usually the actors eat first, because obviously we need them for filming. And then we need the crew to film them. And then we need you guys to fill out the scene. So just strictly by that logic is why we typically do it that way. It's not always. Sometimes we'll even break you first, believe it or not. But that's typically why that happens. You're expected to show up on time and be ready to do your job. Everything you would expect from a regular job applies, and sometimes more. As a background player, you may be asked to commit to recurring shoot days. Your flexibility in this area can be vital to being asked back on a lot of different projects, especially in television. Sometimes this is very helpful since multiple shoot days can become better known to the crew. On multiple shoot days, rather, you may become better known to the crew, persons like myself, who if I see you on another show and I know you're reliable, I'm more likely to put you into a spot where I know I don't have to worry about it for the next 10 hours because I've got a reliable person in that position. Go figure. Occasionally there are specific things that are required to make the scene work properly. As an example, if you have 5 people in a saloon and 3 of them are the main actors and then I've got a bartender and a patron, well, if we don't finish filming that day, I'm going to need that bartender and that patron back. So that flexibility is very, very, very much what we need. And then, on those days that we are having you back, your likelihood of being seen on screen or featured on screen increases tremendously. So it's a good, now, that being said, that doesn't mean that just because you've become featured, you get a star on your trailer and a residuals contract. Just, gone over most of this, let's see, I'm gonna skip some of this. You stand a better chance, yeah. So, the ones who have learned, there are many people who want to be actors, and those who have learned the craft have a distinct advantage. So if you want to go further in it, hey, take a serious class on film production. Learn what it is to be on the cinematography side of it, on the direction side of it. And like he was saying when he first came here, it was more about the theory than the actual practice of filming. Theory is very, very important. There's 2 types of assistant directors in film. Those who went through a training program that's provided by the Directors Guild, and it's extraordinarily difficult to get into that training program, and that mostly teaches you theory and paperwork. And then there's the ones who came in the way that I did, where it was a lot of just hard work and wearing a lot of tennis shoes out, while I learned the theory things on my own as I was really busting my hump to make sure everybody had water. So that's the kind of things that are out there, but both sides are equally important, and especially if you want to do your job well as background and then as a stand-in and then perhaps as an actor someday, and maybe someday soon. The more of those things you know, the better it is for you in the long run, just across the board. If you know the vernacular, the lexicon, the vocabulary, however you prefer to say it, then it's much easier to understand why a director or assistant director or anybody else on set is doing what it is that they are doing, and how better to provide a good shot for them of you. I said that, all right. My quick list of do's and don'ts. I only did 10 of each of these, and I'll try to go through them quick. The do's. Number 1, ask questions, but use common sense and discretion about who you ask and what you ask them. Number 2, show up ready. Usually BG, I say BG, background. Show up ready and prepared to do their part. Unfortunately, there are those who show up ready to do their part, but they have their priorities in the wrong order. Have options. When the casting person calls and asks if you're available for a shoot, ask them at that time. That is the right time to ask them about clothing and hair and makeup, and those questions can go a very, very long way to making you look good, not only to them at that moment, but even better when you're on set and you know what it is that you've got going on. When somebody like me comes up and says, you are going to be outside in the sun all day, you do realize this, and you say no, that's not so great. Let's see. Be flexible. I've gone over them. Having the ability to stay longer or come back for incomplete scenes. If you don't have that flexibility, it's not always, but it can be a deal breaker for a lot of shoots and for some casting agents. Here's a fun one that I ran into recently. Have fuel. If you're asked to use your car for a shoot, show up with a full tank of gas. Okay? As part of your agreement, you are paid a bump for the use of your vehicle. So, if you show up and your car is empty and then we end up doing an extensive scene or scenes over and over again, we can dismiss you or deny you that bump, because if we put any fuel in your car, then that bump is no longer there, because we have already provided it to you as a real object instead of a monetary compensation. Be a good scout. The motto of the Boy Scouts is be prepared. That's the perfect time to take this to heart. You You should be prepared for the day ahead. There are many things that productions will provide you on set, but ultimately the only person that you can rely on is you. Even not me, you. You gotta rely on yourself, and I don't mean that to dismiss any obligations, but you will find occasionally that is the case. Be prepared for bad weather, bring a bottle of water, have a snack, bring a book. There are many things that you can do to make the experience much better for yourself. Number 7, learn the rules. Some people in the industry work for years without learning what the actual rules are. There are courtesies that are commonplace, which are taken for granted, which are not rules. As an example, breakfast. It's a courtesy. Productions do not have to provide you breakfast. They do have to provide you a lunch, but they do not have to provide you a breakfast. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't want to provide it for you, and that doesn't mean that we don't usually do that, because usually we do. However, if we're running short of time in the morning, and we push you forward, and it goes past your, and you end up having to skip your breakfast, the fact of the matter is, it's a courtesy. So, when people say show up on time, and I know, like Bobby said, if you're 10 minutes early, you're late. Well, the truth is that when it comes to the courtesy breakfast, it is ready 30 minutes before call time, typically. Stuff happens, sometimes it's not, but if you want the breakfast, you should show up 30 minutes early from your call time. Number 8, know your rights. One of my favorite songs out there. Abuse of your position on a film is not acceptable. That doesn't mean that you should scream at anyone that you're being abused. It means that you should defend your rights. The best way to do this is to go back to number 1 and ask questions. If you're aware of your rights, you can avoid having them abused, and if ever your safety is put in danger, you always have the right to refuse. Always. Number 9, help others. Many people on any shoot may have to make things work. Did I write this? I think I wrote this. It's an enormous amount of detail for anybody to handle. I mean, just like somebody like myself has so many things going on at one time that it's really, really difficult. So as a background player, your contribution to helping maintain all that detail-oriented venture can seem small, but at the end of the day, it can save the tape from being ruined. Even the slightest help is beneficial, from cleaning up after yourself to assisting the crew by holding a door open. All those small things count, and people do remember. Believe me, at locations, always remembers who does and doesn't clean up. Number 10, which she mentioned as well, volunteer. When somebody comes in and they ask for volunteers for a scene, speak up. Unless the reason has to do with inability or safety, speak up, because this is how people get noticed, they get used, and they get asked back. If you're there to work, you should, if you're not there to work, rather, you just shouldn't be there. It may be a lot of fun to do background, which it should be, but at the end of the day, the truth is that productions are business ventures with a considerable amount of money involved, and you should be there to work. So, don't. Number 1, misbehave. Don't misbehave. It's a job. You're being paid to perform a duty like any other job, and you're expected to behave in a professional and appropriate manner. Number 2, ignore instructions. Though this seems to be part of the first don't ignore instructions, it is often misunderstood. Many times it seems as though the proper or normal action is contrary to the given. What I mean is, sometimes on set I may instruct you to do something which seems unnatural, but for the camera and the blocking it makes perfect sense. So don't ignore the instructions just because they seem a little awkward. I may instruct him to speak to me but be facing him, but for the camera it would look correct. Number 3, don't disappear. Bobby also covered this. The person in charge of you are often in charge of many other things at the same time. Countless times in a day I'm listening to several conversations at once. When you're called upon, if I don't know where you are, I can't use you. This makes you look bad, and it makes me look bad. And if you make me look bad, I'm not going to use you in the future. Let the person handling you know if you have to step away. It may seem silly, but it's the best thing that you can do to impress them. Number 4, don't get cocky. In 15 years, and I've been doing this for 15 years, I've only had to dismiss background players from my sets twice. And both times it was for being cocky. Once it was a guy who insisted on having a chair when the other 30 people were standing. And I politely dismissed him from the set. And by politely, I mean I went to the biggest guy that was near me and said, get him off my set. The other time was somebody who had known me probably 6 or 7 years earlier through a friend. And he said, oh, I know Carlos, I can get away with whatever I want. And I said, you used to know me, now you don't. Number 5, assume, don't assume. This is simply a good rule for everyday life. In film, it can protect people that are around you. Even if you've got experience and whatever the scene requires, film has a way of making that irrelevant. There are always things that can be looked at from a different angle in film. That's part of what makes something compelling to watch in the first place. Assuming can easily ruin a shot or get people hurt. And I mentioned these things about getting hurt and safety a lot because as an assistant director, I am theoretically the safety chief on set. I say theoretically because everybody should be the safety chief on set, every last person. Number 6, don't overstep. If you want to become a stunt person, get training. There are schools for doing stunts. There are schools for doing precision driving. There are schools, obviously, for acting, this, that, and the other. Don't overstep your bounds and don't overstep your abilities. People do get hurt that way. Just because you had a dangerous occupation before, or you're confident that you can bench more than the guy next to you, it's just not a good idea. Now, this applies to many other things. Attempts to instruct other background can also get them hurt. If you're a former police officer and I'm playing a police officer, although I may appreciate your advice, I should really just be listening to what is being asked of me from the production, because something may inadvertently get transferred there and I may end up getting somebody hurt or myself. So, please don't do that. Number 7, don't mess around. Aside from the fact that it's unsafe for you and others, horseplay and worse is unprofessional and can cost you a job now and in the future. There are better and more fun ways and times to express such behavior. 8, I have run into this, don't be intoxicated. Should go without saying, but people have made a mistake. Don't expect anything but the worst if you show up or become intoxicated while on set or on your contract. It will end your film career immediately. Number 9, will also end your film career immediately. Don't have weapons. Don't do it. The only weapons that are on set are the ones that are provided to you by either the props department or an armorer. If you have a weapon, any kind of weapon, you will be regarded as hostile and a danger to those who are around you. Should you be issued one for a scene by props or from an armorer, well, you should treat that weapon, or prop, or otherwise, as though it is ready to kill. That is just the truth. Never point any kind of weapon unless specifically instructed to do so. Never put your finger on a trigger unless specifically instructed to do so. And never unholster a weapon that is given to you in a holster unless specifically instructed to do so. Just don't do it. And number 10, the last one of this whole rant on the do's and don'ts. Number 10 of the don'ts is tolerate abuse. Don't tolerate it. You're just as valid as every other person on a film set. Just because you're not the producer or an actor or a director does not give anybody the right to abuse you. No one. Whether it be verbal, physical, sexual, psychological, any type of abuse is still abuse. So if it happens, tell someone right away, whether it's another background player, a production member, or producer, whoever it is. If you're being abused, that's simply not tolerable. You have the right to be treated fair, and you have the right to be treated with respect. So, there's so much more, but I'm going to skip down to the last little piece here. When will I be a star? Well, the film and television industry can be quite fun, and the greatest joy in being part of that industry is being able to see later what an audience sees when they get to enjoy what you've been a part of. You know, it's even better when you get to share it with your friends or your family or anything like that and say, that was me, that was my foot, that was my left foot. I remember that one. So, you know, if you do get to move up and be a big star and get a trailer and get a nice fat contract and do residuals for the rest of your life, that's extraordinary. And that's incredible and it's awesome and I hope it does happen for you. Do me a favor. When that happens for you, let me know how you did it. And remember that all the other people who are starting today are starting where you did. So just show them the same respect that you were shown. And perhaps a little better if you can. That'd be great. So, if you really want to know when you're going to be a star, I'll tell you when it is. It's now. You already are. You're already on screen. You're already on set. You're already with movie professionals. You're already doing it. And every person out there, almost every person out there, who had their start, had it somewhere similar to this. I began as background. I'm happy to be here to speak to background. I was on a film set and broke a couple of these rules to get in here. No, just kidding. I didn't know what I was doing the first time I was on as background, and I approached somebody on set and I told him that I was interested in doing crew for a living. But the amount of time that I took to tell you that sentence is the amount of time that I took from their whole day. I literally said, I'm really interested in doing this, I've had some classes, if you have any time at all to discuss it with me, I'd love it. I'm sorry, I know you're busy, I will leave you alone. At the end of the day, he had told somebody else, and they came over to me and said, if you're serious about that, I'll put you on the crew tomorrow morning. So, that is extraordinarily rare, and really the reason that it happened, as I later found out, is they had one man day left on their schedule that they had to spend that money. And they had 1 day left of shooting, and I just happened to say it at the right time. That's it. Happy to take any questions. Or happy to pass this over to somebody else. Yes, ma'am?
Well, I was just, you went in a different direction, but the thing about scouting, you said that word, and it remember, I've been doing this a long time, and one of the casting people I worked for a lot called me and said, hey, we need such and such. Do you know anybody that knows anybody that could do this?
Mm-hmm.
And so I said, well, I'll certainly go. And I went to my favorite little, hangouts where I go. And I started telling people, hey, so-and-so is looking for such and such. And so now I automatically do it because you never know. Someone might be interested in it and they don't know how to get into it. Like Elizabeth was looking for a toddler and I saw an adorable little person the other day. And his dad goes, I have been looking for someone to get me into the industry. So keep your ears open, and if you have a lot of knowledge to share. We all get our Facebook information. Put it out there. Don't be shy.
Yeah,
there might be somebody looking.
Most certainly. I don't remember the name of the fighter pilot that I worked with, but right now, if I needed a fighter pilot, I would just start asking people, and somebody's likely to know. I mean, it's one of those strange things. Who's born in January? Okay. I am too. So it's that common that I mean, the truth of the matter is this: if you have a room of people that is larger than 20, and you start asking whose birthday is what, the likelihood is that a couple of you will have the same birthday just in a group of 20. So that's how small the world is, and how easy it is to find things like that when you need them. You had a question.
Now, I haven't been doing this very long, but I've been caught in a couple of situations where somebody gives me direction, they set me up at the count of 7, walk from here to here kind of thing, and then somebody comes along, zzz, hey you, go over here, and I go, well, but I don't get a chance. Is there a good way to deal with that? Or?
Yeah, the best way to deal with that is to immediately go, I was just instructed by that guy, or that girl. And that, because there is the chain of command, and if I'm out there just as a set PA and I give you that instruction, I'm doing my best on it, but if an AD comes by and says, I want you to do something else, you do what the AD has suggested over mine. But the easiest and fastest way is just, as soon as you realize that's happening, that you're being given a counter instruction, is to just bring it up and say, they asked me to do this. If I'm coming over to you to do that after an AD has given you an instruction and I start into it, and you tell me that an AD said so, Never mind, please do what they ask.
Okay.
Yes?
I want to touch something that Bob said about ride sharing.
Mm-hmm.
There's been some parts that I wanted to submit to, but the ride thing kind of didn't get me. What's the best way to go about seeing who's on that set?
We have, Casting Copy has a second page called New Mexico Background Ride Sharing, if you want to look up and join. We ask you to, one, put your zip code, so we have an idea of where you live, if you live close to someone. One time, a very wonderful man and I picked up someone who lived in Rio Rancho. I swear, we were in Arizona. It was like, when did we pass the state line? It took us an hour and a half to get to his home. So if you put your zip code on there, it really helps because somebody can say, oh, I live in 87108. So it's not far from me. Also, give as good as you get, people. A lot of people who don't have vehicles are asking for rides. Please kick in gas money. We appreciate, like myself, I appreciate the company when I'm driving long distances. Transportation, and Carlos can probably take over on this as well. Transportation is not provided by the production companies. So we're kind of on our own. Now, in my opinion, every location manager should have to get in his car at 4 o'clock in the morning by himself, drive to that gorgeous location he just picked up, spend 12 hours in the sun, drive home, and do it again the next morning. And then maybe he'll go, maybe something closer to Santa Fe or Albuquerque would work. But at this point, if you're talking, thank you. We've been dealing with this for 2 years now, trying to figure out a way we can get transportation. Please, as a group, if anyone knows of bus companies, let us know. If anyone knows of churches that have vans, let us know. I've been working on this so hard. But when production gets involved, it gets very expensive, correct? Because of the Teamsters.
The Teamsters and the fuel. Fuel's expensive.
And fuel's expensive. Well, yeah, it's expensive for us too, but I mean, to me, it just makes sense to get 40 people safely to set, dropped off at base camp, and then safely back to their cars, and a little time to sleep. But then, that's me.
And a little higher insurance rate.
So that's the thing, there's so many variables. New Mexico is the third largest state in the country, okay? I will put up the map again on how long it takes you to drive to certain areas. Like, everybody was like, I wanna be on Clint Eastwood's movie in Las Cruces. Well, if you listen and you pay attention, you go to New Mexico Film, you'll see how many background they're hiring. If they're only hiring like 100, they're gonna pick from that area. I told people your best luck is go to cruises, get a hotel, go to every restaurant in town, the man's gotta eat. So.
I didn't realize those times were so hard. Yes, you had a question?
Oh, I wanted to know, I know in California.
Hello? Yeah, I wanted to know, I know in California, union does SAG up there, correct, as far as the background? And you can actually get I believe your SAG card if you do 6 background in California, or no?
3 SAG vouchers.
In background?
Yeah, so you could actually do it in 3 if you are on the SAG vouchers those first 3 times.
Okay, and is there any chance, possibility that New Mexico would become SAG background?
There is a possibility, so far it hasn't happened. There's a large, now this has been a controversial thing for a long while, and it's quite understandable why. A lot of people here would really like it to become SAG background here because, of course, we, for one, make more money. But that's part of the reason that we get films here in the first place.
Exactly, yeah.
Is because it's less expensive. So it's a double-edged thing. I mean, we might get SAG background, but get half as many jobs.
Okay, thank you.
Now,
Is there any magic to getting recurring background as opposed to one that owns?
suddenly you're behind me.
I was just curious if there's any type of magic that occurs when you get recurring roles versus one day. Is there something
Is there
special
magic
that
to
you
getting it, or is there a magic after it happens?
Your attitude will help a lot, you wanna work.
That's true, it really, really will. Yes, there's a little bit of magic to it, learning the craft mostly. And everybody has their different things that they adhere to, and there are different things that make sense most to them. Mostly on set, it's just being attentive and providing what's asked of you, and a little bit more. And those things do get noticed. Sometimes, that's the one section that I skipped there. Sometimes somebody will get some extraordinary break just because they look a certain way, or they're a certain height, or they're a certain build, or they look like somebody else, or that has nothing to do with their skill set level as an actor. That just has to do with happenstance of them being lucky that day. They're just a lucky dog that day. And that's just the nature of the beast. When it comes to getting the recurring roles, the first person you should let know that you're interested in that are your casting agents. You should tell them you want to do recurring roles, or you are really interested in doing photo double, or you're really interested in doing stand-in. Those are the people who are going to be able to put you into that position first and foremost above everybody else, including above the production people like myself on set. When I'm asked to select somebody for something special, that's only because they've forgotten to do that ahead of time. Most of the time, they don't forget. So really let your casting people know that that's what you're most interested in doing.
Okay, thank you.
Afterward, the magic is brilliant, because then you just eat with us.
And that's the other reason your special skills, you want to make sure you put those on the listings, because a lot of times they're looking for people with real medical background or whatnot for those kind of reoccurring roles based on the show. So when it says special skills, think of anything that you do that, even if you don't think it's special.
And don't exaggerate it.
Yeah, don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't exaggerate.
If you've ridden a horse once, don't say that you're good at horseback riding.
If you don't know how to hold a gun, don't say you know how to hold a gun. There are weapons classes available. I'll put them up on Casting Copy. If you're ex-military, of course, or if you're ex-service, you know how to hold a gun. But I tell you, there are people who will tear a piece apart if they see somebody doing this with the gun, or carrying it wrong, like walking, right behind another background with the gun at their head. They're just gonna go, oh my God. And it's gonna ruin the entire show for them.
So that being said, yeah, don't exaggerate. Do list what you are capable of, and use it as an excuse to learn new things and have new experiences. Because the more you learn, the more we can use it for. Thank you. Any other questions for any of us? Yes, ma'am.
On the PAs,
I had no understanding that there was a designated PA for maybe a certain group. And so how do we know, like on the production that we were on, how do we know who our PA is? And I knew the one AD, but I didn't know of any more than that. So are there typically more than one AD? And how do we know who these people are?
I ask that every day on set. It is a good question. It is a very, very valid question. I remember my first day on this background, I had no clue who anybody was. So basically, whoever it is who's interacting with you the most, who started this PA, that's likely the background PA. All the PAs actually have the right and the duty to interact with you, but typically the one who you interact with first in the morning is the one who's going to sign you in, and then you have your set PA for background who runs you on set. So you kind of have a team of two normally, sometimes more, depending on how many background artists there are. So far as the assistant directors go, it actually does not start with the assistant directors top down. It starts with the unit production manager, and they're in charge of the entire unit so far as directorial things go on behalf of the producers. The next one down is the first assistant director. They will almost always be standing with the director, and their job is to coordinate everything on set in order to fulfill the vision of the director. Then you'll have the second AD, which you'll see far less often. Usually they're back in the trailer and they're making a call sheet, they're doing production reports, they're running a base camp to make sure everyone's getting through here and making the wardrobe properly. The next one that you'll have is the second AD. And typically that's the person who's coordinating the background on set. So that is, so far as an assistant director goes, that's the assistant director that you should approach if you ever need to approach an assistant director. Because they are the ones who are directly responsible for you, both practically and legally. Okay? My pleasure. I hope that helped.
It did, we're trying to put persons with like, Bosco and Panda would been.
So
For
Panda,
everybody.
Panda would have been your check-in PA, and then I probably would have been the guy running you on set, and then Bosco would be running you on set as an additional assistant director, and that's just because once film gets larger, legally they're required to have a certain number of assistant directors in proportion to the amount of background players that they're using.
So she was not a PA, she was an assistant director then.
Correct.
Yeah, I did not.
Yeah, she was an additional assistant director.
They really should introduce themselves in the morning, that would be a big help.
I
They
understand.
come to the holding tent and say, and, you know, we have, Carlos is good at that, he'll come in, he'll tell you story time, he'll tell you what you're shooting that day. Every set is different. We can't clone, well, can we clone you?
Copyright.
Right, yeah.
Copyright
Only if it's
infringement.
Please.
Yes, sir.
It's basically a question on etiquette, but I heard the tape of one star that lost it on set, and it was quite lengthy. And it seemed as if nobody stepped in to stop it, whether you were an extra, assistant, or the director. What was the confusion? Even though he's a star, there's still certain, you know.
Certain etiquette.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, life imitating, you're not going to put up outside that.
I was there that day.
What happened?
So one of the reasons that it kind of carried on is because when it occurred, he was in a harness and he was 40 feet above the ground. So he kind of, I mean, legitimately, he had a really good reason for losing his temper. Those harnesses are incredibly uncomfortable, and the crew had had about an hour and 45 minutes to set up the lighting before that had happened. So once they flew him up there, he had spent that time preparing to perform. And once he was up there, then they started to tweak the lights. Now, that's not to say that they started to tweak the lights with any malice. They were, of course, just trying to make it better too. Unfortunately, when you're 40 feet in the air and you're hanging in an uncomfortable position with an automatic weapon in your hand, it tends to be a little bit trying to concentrate when you look down and there's a camera being set up, or there's a camera filming you and somebody's right behind it moving a light. It just was not the right time to do it. For the remainder of the show, those two were kept apart from one another completely. They were not allowed to view each other.
And he's been back and had a good time.
Yeah, and I've worked with him several times. He's actually, this is the only time I've seen him lose his temper ever. So,
Is that Christian Bale in Terminator, right?
I don't know what you're talking about, sir.
They turned it into a great
Why
dance
did it carry
song.
on so long? Well, part of that was because most people didn't step in, and then in that particular nuance of that moment, the only persons who really should have stepped in were either the director or the producer, because they were the people who were the adults in the room. It's not to mean that anybody else couldn't have said something, but so far as the power play goes, they were the only people who had the clout, if you will.
But if we were an extra, and with the knowledge, if we had stepped in and stopped it, the knowledge of getting, dismissed, it seems to me it would have been worthwhile to stop that kind of interaction.
I've put my nose where it didn't belong many a time, so I concur with you. Unfortunately, that was the circumstance that day, that particular day. I've seen worse, believe it or not. The worst I ever saw, I saw a director punch a producer in the throat.
Oh my.
And when that happened, all of us stepped in immediately.
That was the news.
No. It was a kid's movie, by the way. Any other questions, ma'am?
It's not really a question, but one thing I learned early on acting, and student films are a great way to start because they're very enthusiastic.
Absolutely.
Smile. My first coach said, no matter how horrible you feel, that's a wide lens, and they can see you. You don't think they do, but they can. And the reason I say that is I was on a 2-day shoot, and a student stopped me the second day and said, hey, you were here yesterday, you really good, we were watching you. And there was at least 1,000 people in that scene. So no matter how horrible you feel, you just gotta cowboy up and just.
That's why every one of my dates goes wrong. Any other questions? Please.
Anyone else?
Yes, sir.
Just a comment. I was on the set background, and we were given, I was on the set doing background, and we were given
Your
an
voice is
instruction,
silky smooth, I love it.
an instruction that wasn't possible. We were asked to go from, we're in a bar scene, go into the dance floor, take your drinks with you, and then I realized we were supposed to applaud the musicians. And I just very quietly leaned over to the AD and said, it might be difficult for us to clap. And I, because before that, the first time I was on as a background in a feature film, I had this wonderful realization that I wasn't responsible for anything except me. And I loved that. So it was kind of decided at that time that the only suggestions that I would make were if there was a safety issue.
Yeah.
But I also, maybe it was age, but I realized that I had to very quietly make suggestions because you don't want to show anyone up. It's being part of that team and letting that person take the credit for having that idea.
Yeah, there's a lot of tender egos out there.
And then finally, something that you said, I always was amazed at, it seemed like every large production I was involved in, there was always someone who was complaining. And they would complain from the second hour on. They complain about waiting. I mean, I always thought I would put on my resume special skills waiting. Because the business is a lot of waiting.
I love it.
But if you're going to complain about it, you shouldn't be doing this. Plus, you drive everybody else crazy.
When I hear that on set, I just think, I've got 10 friends sitting at home right now that would be here in a heartbeat. I'd be here.
I completely understand it. At the same time, I do try to bear in mind that most people are, they don't come from that world. Most of the people have worked their whole life in an 8-hour job. I came from a job that was 16 hours a day before I got into film.
Oh, so, you have easy days.
So yeah, I was like, well, what's everyone mad about? So yeah, but most people haven't come from that, and a lot of people have never even experienced that. So you just try to bear in mind that everybody's a little bit different. Everyone's got a little bit different thing to offer and skill set to offer, and some people just can't stand up for, I've had people who can't stand up for 20 minutes on the set, but man, they were great when we rolled the camera. So
You made a comment about if you were an ex-policeman.
Did I nail it?
I was an attorney.
Okay.
And one of the first things I found out when I went to LA to take the acting classes was that if I act as an attorney the way I did in real life, it would be really boring.
You'd be dry.
And a Hollywood attorney is totally different. So it's like that advice I always kept to myself.
Yeah, you'll be badgering the witness constantly. My dad was a judge.
So anyway.
And also, Misha's not here, but she will tell you, find your real well. Find your real well. Like I said, I've done homeless, I've done Republican National Convention. So I can go either way, but go with your strengths and with your special skills.
That's all I'd say.
In my 10 years, I crashed through the Lincoln National Convention. It was awesome. Who knows Denny? Anyone know Denny?
Denny is, for those of you who don't know, obviously most of you do, he's an independent filmmaker here in New Mexico. Denny is going to express to you how important it is to get on set and get some reels, to get some experience, to be directed, and what a great thing indies are for New Mexico.
All right, hey, hello. One thing I want to say real quick is the background motto should be just the same motto the Army gives you: hurry up and wait. That's it. Okay. But anyway, background's a lot of fun. The first one I did was in 2006 for Love Rage. It was a blast. It was 4 days out at Tingley Coliseum in the boxing scene, 14-hour days. It was cool. I walked away with Bryan Cranston, talked to him for about 15 minutes. I heard Helen Mirren tell her husband to F off, and she stormed off set. Everybody was decked out in 1976 clothes, which was a blast. It was like, I remember these days. I was little, but I remember. But anyways, when you're an actor and you want to come in on an independent film, you're not only helping a filmmaker, you're working on your own resume. Okay, so you have more things to work on that show up there. One thing Burt Reynolds regrets is not we're doing enough. That's something Clint Eastwood's not going to have to worry about. He's on everything, it seems, and has a million things out there. But another thing with background, if you commit, show up. We did a wedding scene for Flyby. I had 8 people, that's all I needed. 3 of them didn't show up. I was on a rush call, I got 3 people in there. So we worked it out. But yeah, don't commit if you're not actually planning on doing it, because you'll never be called again. Let's see what else. I do background, the paycheck's good, but also do a network. I met Ben Painter on the set of Waco. He was in the last film, Neighbors. I met Tom Thumb shortly after he moved down here to Colorado. He was in Neighbors. He's going to be in my upcoming film, Chasing the Dragon, feature film. We're seeking funding and everything now. So, you know, if you don't like the script and it sucks, don't do it. But if you get out there and you do some work, anything, you know, that's something you can throw on your resume, on your reel. Tom's going to have a good reel coming up. And, you know, it's a lot. Doing, you know, it is a bit of a pain in the butt sometimes. You got to work around schedules. You got to get locations. You got to make sure everybody's going to be there. Everybody knows their lines. You know, I always like to have rehearsal. I try to, anyways. But yeah, my upcoming film, there's 3 people that was in Neighbors that'll bring it in to Chasing the Dragon. And actually, I want to talk to Michelle about a part for her also. She was in Neighbors as well. But yeah, there you are. But yeah, just, you know, have fun, get out there. Do something.
Any questions?
Do the best you can. Any questions?
Sure. What's the hardest part about setting a film up?
Scheduling, pretty much for me. Scheduling, yeah, making sure everybody's schedule is on set, making sure we have a place. I've had actors, hey, can we do it tomorrow? I'm like, no, because there's 500 actors on this, and you know, it's so people think you can do it overnight. Sure. I was like, no, we can't do that. Okay, this person not available, this person not available. We don't have the location for that day, you know. And I think the best thing is if you're coming in on the film, make sure if anybody asks you something, needs information, reply as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Don't waste 2 weeks and then answer. It's like, well, we could have filmed this last week, but you guys, you know, you didn't want to answer it, so this one, you know. But yeah, the scheduling is probably about the hardest.
It's difficult.
It is. Let's see, I have an upcoming film, Tony Good Grandfather. We're going for funding and everything. The script's been finalized. Have some good actors coming in. One's flying down from Seattle. And